In this podcast episode, Ben Shapiro delves into the aftermath of the 2024 election, analyzing the Democratic Party's struggles and the various explanations offered for their defeat. Shapiro critiques the party's tendency to attribute their loss to external factors such as inflation and economic dissatisfaction, rather than addressing deeper issues within their platform and disconnect from the American electorate. Shapiro highlights comments from Kamala Harris's advisors, who argue that dissatisfaction with the country's direction and economic woes were the primary reasons for her defeat. This narrative suggests that the Democratic platform remained sound and the party merely faced insurmountable external challenges. Shapiro argues that this perspective is a convenient excuse that absolves the party from making necessary changes to their approach. He points out that the Democrats' failure to connect with voters, particularly younger demographics, is a significant issue that they are reluctant to confront. The podcast also touches on the broader cultural disconnect between the Democratic elite and the average American. Shapiro references a New York Times article discussing the fatigue among the Trump resistance movement, indicating that many former activists are disillusioned and unsure of how to mobilize again. This sentiment reflects a growing realization that past protests have not led to substantial change, and many are questioning the effectiveness of their efforts. Shapiro argues that the left's failure to adapt its policies and messaging has contributed to this disillusionment. He suggests that the causes championed by the left are increasingly viewed as disconnected from the realities faced by everyday Americans. This disconnect is exemplified by the recent controversy surrounding bathroom policies, where Nancy Mace introduced a resolution requiring individuals to use bathrooms corresponding to their biological sex. Shapiro contends that this issue resonates with a significant portion of the American public, who feel that the left's stance on gender identity is out of touch with common sense. Shapiro critiques the Democratic Party's reliance on identity politics, which he believes alienates many voters. He cites Jasmine Crockett, a Texas representative who made a controversial statement about race and oppression, arguing that the left's narrative of perpetual victimhood is not only flawed, but also counterproductive. Shapiro emphasizes that most Americans desire to be treated as individuals rather than as members of specific racial or identity groups. He further argues that the left's focus on identity politics has led to a backlash, as many Americans reject the notion that they should be judged based on their race or gender. This sentiment is echoed in polling data showing that a significant majority of Americans oppose allowing biological males to compete in women's sports and use women's bathrooms. Shapiro posits that these views reflect a broader desire for fairness and equality, rather than the divisive identity politics championed by the left. Shapiro discusses the concept of empathy in politics, arguing that the left has misplaced its sympathies. He points to the tragic case of a young woman murdered by an illegal immigrant, emphasizing that empathy should be directed toward victims of crime rather than toward individuals who identify as part of marginalized groups. He criticizes the Democratic Party for prioritizing the feelings of certain groups over the safety and well-being of the general public. This misplaced empathy is further illustrated by the actions of some Democratic senators who voted to block arms sales to Israel during a time of conflict. Shapiro argues that this reflects a broader trend within the party to align with anti-Israel sentiments, which he believes is out of step with the views of most Americans. As the podcast progresses, Shapiro contemplates the future of the Democratic Party, suggesting that their current trajectory is unsustainable. He argues that the party's reliance on identity politics, coupled with a failure to address the concerns of everyday Americans, will continue to hinder their electoral prospects. He believes that until the Democrats reevaluate their core values and messaging, they will struggle to regain the trust and support of the electorate. Shapiro concludes by emphasizing the importance of addressing the underlying issues that have led to the party's decline. He argues that the Democrats must move away from their current approach and focus on policies that resonate with the broader American public. Only then can they hope to reverse their fortunes and regain relevance in the political landscape.